Hi, the unmasking. Hi, welcome. I'm Kristen. I'm the library director for the Island Free Library on Block Island. I bring you this short story program for adult listeners, so-called Frankenstein Tea, as it is, it's echoing this idea of this monster of a virus, this monster of a time, as it continues to persist to be. It also echoes this idea of copyright law and what can I really come on YouTube and record? Should it be, if we followed all the rules, it would be something in the public domain, copyrighted over 100 years ago. But, there's some rules I follow and some I don't. So I consider this a library program of a reader advisory and a short story program where we have an opportunity to look at different authors and explore different genres, and to look at different literature from around the globe. Maybe I'm not so good at about around the globe. I'm pretty good at different genres and own voice, but maybe not so good at around the globe. Maybe I could think about that. But so I don't consider it breaking copyright law when I read something that isn't 100 years old and isn't in public domain. I consider it me as the librarian turning you on to something that perhaps you haven't read before or haven't thought about reading. So that's Frankenstein references. And the tea is about us coming together and having some tea, taking a time out, maybe making peace with this time of the epidemic, maybe taking a different approach to our afternoon, our lives, wherever you're at, coming together, being quiet and sharing something. I don't have tea today. I have a nice big glass of water. Not big, but I have a nice glass of cold water. We had a little party here today. Today is my coworker Judy Mitchell's birthday. Happy birthday, Judy. And we had a little party for her. We had a nice little party for her. We definitely celebrate birthdays in this building. We are very close-knit staff, and we spend a lot of time together, as everyone who does in their workplace. You spend time with your colleagues and coworkers, and they're your peers. And we always celebrate birthdays together, and it is the presence of them that are our presents, as my other coworker Susanna said today. The presents are the presents. We were trying to teach that to Judy's great-grandchild, and she was like, "What'd you get her?" Our presents. But and she was like, "Yeah, what are your presents?" We were like, "Our presents." But so we just had a nice party, and we've had to learn how to re-navigate that, right? We have to sit sort of separate. We crank open the office window. Not everybody is in the office. We take shifts eating together and being with the birthday person. And then we finish lunch, and then we all come in for cake, and then we have to take shifts where we're eating our cake. But we're doing a pretty good job navigating it. And we had her great-granddaughter with us, and we had Susanna's daughter with us for cake, and we had our dear friend who still volunteers with us and worked at this library for many, many years, long before me, and I'm the oldest employee at this point, so she was here long before me and worked with us up until a few years ago. So we had Pam Glenn here today, and that was great fun. We had a really nice time for Judy. So happy birthday, Judy. We had fun celebrating you today. I suppose I picked something for Judy's birthday, although I didn't do it on purpose. And now I'm looking over here at it and thinking, is it for Judy's birthday? Probably not in the way, not in a very literal way, but Judy likes a good story. She listens to this and she likes a good story. So let's hope this is a good story. I have not had time to pre-read it, as I try, 99% of the time to do with the short stories. I have not pre-read this, but I'm going to give it a whirl, and I trust that I can. I'm reading Ray Bradbury today, and I've been reading out loud for almost a year now, 10 months of shy of a year. So I'm getting better at it every time I read out loud. So I trust that I can read this today through. Ray Bradbury, I can usually do. I've had a good couple of weeks of reading out loud. So I've read some hard things. And I've read some in my personal life. I've been whipping through books. Again, I did not read a lot last winter at this time, like nothing at all. But right now I'm really reading, whipping through books, hard ones too, hard stuff I'm reading. Well, hard for me. It's probably not hard for you, but hard meaning that they're meaty. Their content is hard. The language is not particularly hard. Some of them, the language is hard, but the content is meaty. So deep, heavy books. But so I think I can do this. Let's try. I'm gonna have a sip of water. Or a few. And you have a sip of tea or whatever you have. It's Saturday afternoon. Maybe you're having a cocktail. Not sure what you're having or what you'd like to be having. I'm not sure where I'm going to hold this big, thick book so that I can read it. How's that? It's pretty good, right? Still in the frame. I don't want it to lean on any keys. I don't want you to lose me. And it's big, it's thick, it's heavy. I don't want it to, take us off the page here, so to speak. Clever, aren't I? Okay, here we go. I think we're in position. This is Ray Bradbury. This short story is called Let's Play Poison. We hate you, cried the 16 boys and girls rushing and crowding about Michael in the schoolroom. Michael screamed. Recess was over. Mr. Howard, the teacher, was still absent from the filling room. We hate you. And the 16 boys and girls, bumping and clustering and breathing, raised a window. It was 3 flights down to the sidewalk. Michael flailed. They took hold of Michael and pushed him out the window. Mr. Howard, their teacher, came into the room. Wait a minute, he shouted. Michael fell 3 flights. Michael died. Nothing was done about it. The police shrugged eloquently. These children were all 8 or 9. They didn't understand what they were doing. So, Mr. Howard's breakdown occurred the next day. He refused ever again to teach. But why? Asked his friends. Mr. Howard gave no answer. He remained silent, and a terrible light filled his eyes. And later he remarked that if he told them the truth, they would think him quite insane. Mr. Howard left Madison City. He went to live in a small nearby town, Green Bay, for 7 years, on an income managed from writing stories and poetry. He never married. The few women he approached always desired children. In the autumn of his 7th year of self-enforced retirement, a good friend of Mr. Howard's, a teacher, fell ill. For lack of a proper substitute, Mr. Howard was summoned and convinced that it was his duty to take over the class. Because he realized the appointment could last no longer than a few weeks, Mr. Howard agreed unhappily. Sometimes, announced Mr. Howard, slowly pacing the aisles of the schoolroom on that Monday morning in September. Sometimes I actually believe that children are invaders from another dimension. He stopped, and his shiny dark eyes snapped from face to face of his small audience. He held one hand behind him, clenched, the other hand like a pale animal, climbed his lapel as he talked, and later climbed back down to toy with his ribboned glasses. Sometimes, he continued, looking at William Arnold and Russell Newell and Donald Bowers and Charlie Hencoop. Sometimes I believe children are little monsters thrust out of hell because the devil can no longer cope with them. And I certainly believe that everything should be done to reform their uncivil little minds. Most of his words ran unfamiliarly into the washed and unwashed ears of Arnold, Newell, Bowers, and company. But the tone inspired one to dread. The little girls lay back in their seats against their pigtails, lest he yank them like bell ropes to summon the dark angels. All stared at Mr. Howard as if hypnotized. You are another race entirely. Your motives, your beliefs, your disobediences, said Mr. Howard. You are not human. You are children. Therefore, until such time as you are adults, you have no right to demand privileges or question your elders, who know better. He paused and put his elegant rump upon the chair behind the neat, dustless desk. Living in your fantasy, he said, scowling darkly. Well, there'll be no fantasy here. You'll soon discover that a ruler on your hand is no dream, no fairy frill, no Peter Pan excitement. He snorted. Have I frightened you? I have? Good. Well and good. You deserve to be. I want you to know where we stand. I am not afraid of you. Remember that. I'm not afraid of you. His hand trembled and he drew back in his chair as all their eyes stared at him. Here, he flung a glance clear across the room. What are you whispering about back there? Some necromancy or other. A little girl raised her hand. What's necromancy? We'll discuss that when our two young friends, Mr. Arnold and Mr. Bowers, explain their whispers. Well, young men? Donald Bowers arose. We don't like you. That's all we said. He sat down again. Mr. Howard raised his brows. I like frankness, truth. Thank you for your honesty. But simultaneously, I do not tolerate flippant rebellion. You'll stay an hour after school tonight and wash the boards. After school, walking home, with autumn leaves falling both before and after his passing, Mr. Howard caught up with 4 of his students. He rapped his cane sharply on the sidewalk. Here, what are you children doing? The startled boys and girls jerked as if struck upon their shoulders by his cane. Oh, they all said. Well, demanded the man, explain. What were you doing here when I came up? William Arnold said, playing poison. Poison? Their teacher's face twisted. He was carefully sarcastic. Poison, poison, playing poison. Well, and how does one play poison? Reluctantly, William Arnold ran off. Come back here, shouted Mr. Howard. I'm only showing you, said the boy, hopping over a cement block of the sidewalk, how we play poison. Whenever we come to a dead man, we jump over him. One does one? Said Mr. Howard. If you jump on a dead man's grave, then you're poisoned and fall down and die, explained Isabel Skelton, much too brightly. Dead men, graves poisoned, Mr. Howard said mockingly. Where do you get this dead man idea? See, said Clara Paris, pointing with her arithmetic. On this square, the names of the 2 dead men. Ridiculous, retorted Mr. Howard, squinting down. Those are simply the names of the contractors who mixed and laid the cement sidewalk. Isabel and Clara both gasped wildly and turned accusing eyes to the boys. You said they were gravestones, they cried, almost together. William Arnold looked at his feet. Yeah, they are. Well, almost. Anyway. He looked up. It's late. I gotta go home. So long. Clara Paris looked at the 2 little names cut into the sidewalk. Mr. Kelly and Mr. Terrell. She read the names. Then these aren't graves? Mr. Carey and Mr. Terrell aren't buried here? See, Isabel, that's what I told you. A dozen times I did. You did not, sulked Isabel. Deliberate lies. Mr. Howard tapped his cane in an impatient code. Falsification of the highest caliber. Good God, Mr. Arnold, Mr. Bowers, there'll be no more of this. Do you understand? Yes, sir, mumbled the boys. Speak up. Yes, sir, they replied again. Mr. Howard swung off swiftly down the street. William Arnold waited until he was out of sight before he said, I hope a bird drops something right smack on his nose. Come on, Clara, let's play poison, said Isabel hopefully. Clara pouted. It's been spoiled. I'm going home. I'm poisoned, cried Donald Bowers, falling to the earth and frothing merrily. Look, I'm poisoned. Gah! Oh, cried Clara angrily and ran away. Saturday morning, Mr. Howard glanced out his front window and swore when he saw Isabel Skelton making chalk marks on his sidewalk and then hopping about, making a monotonous sing-song with her voice. Stop that! Rushing out, he almost flung her to the pavement in his emotion. He grabbed her and shook her violently and let her go and stood over her and the chalk marks. I was only playing hopscotch, she sobbed, hands over her eyes. I don't care. You can't play it here, he declared. Bending, he erased the chalk marks with his handkerchief, muttering, young witch, pentagrams, rhymes, and incantations, and all looking perfectly innocent. God, how innocent, you little fiend. He made as if to strike her, but stopped. Isabel ran off, wailing, Go ahead, you little fool, he screamed furiously. Run off and tell your little cohorts that you failed. They'll all have to try some other way. They won't get around me. They won't. Oh, no. He stalked back into his house and poured himself a stiff drink of brandy and drank it down. The rest of the day, he heard the children playing kick the can, hide and seek, over Annie over, jacks, tops, mibs, and the sound of the little monsters in every shrub and shadow would not let him rest. Another week of this, he thought, and I'll be stark staring. He flung his hand to his aching head. God in heaven, why weren't we all born adults? Another week, then, and the hatred growing between him and the children, the hate and the fear growing apace. The nervousness, the sudden tantrums over nothing, and then the silent waiting, the way children climbed the trees and looked at him as they swiped late apples, the melancholy smell of autumn settling in around the town, the days growing short, the night coming too soon. But they won't touch me. They won't dare touch me, thought Mr. Howard, sucking down one glass of brandy after another. It's all very silly anyhow, and there's nothing to it. I'll soon be away from here, and them. I'll soon. There was a white skull at the window. It was 8:00 of a Thursday evening. It had been a long week with the angry flares and the accusations. He had had to continually chase the children away from the water main excavation in front of his house. Children loved excavations, hiding places, pipes and conduits and trenches. And they were ever a scramble over and on and down, in and up, out of the holes where the new pipes were being laid. It was all finished, thank the Lord, and tomorrow the workmen would shovel in the earth and tamp it down and put in a new cement sidewalk, and that would eliminate the children. But right now, there was a white skull at the window. There could be no doubt that a boy's hand held the skull against the glass, tapping it, moving it. There was a childish tittering from outside. Mr. Howard burst from the house. Hey, you! He exploded into the midst of the three running boys. He leaped after them, shouting and yelling. The street was dark, but he saw the figures dart beyond and below him. He saw them sort of bound and could not remember the reason for this until too late. The earth opened under him. He fell and lay in a pit, his head taking a terrific blow from a laid water pipe. And as he lost consciousness, He had an impression as of an avalanche set off by his fall, cascading down cool, moist pellets of dirt upon his pants, his shoes, upon his coat, upon his spine, upon the back of his neck, his head, filling his mouth, his ears, his eyes, his nostrils. The neighbor lady with the eggs wrapped in a napkin knocked on Mr. Howard's door the next day for 5 minutes. When she opened the door finally and walked in, she found nothing but specules of rug dust floating in the sunny air. The big halls were empty. The cellar smelled of coal and clinkers, and the attic had nothing in it but a rat, a spider, and a faded letter. Funniest thing, she said many times in the following years. Whatever happened to Mr. Howard? And adults, being what they are, never observant, paid no attention to the children playing poison on Oak Bay Street and all the following autumns, even when the children leaped over one particular square of cement, twisted about, and glanced at the marks on it, which read, M. Howard, R.I.P. Who's Mr. Howard, Billy? I guess he's the guy who laid the cement. What does R.I.P. mean? Who knows? You're poison. You stepped on it. Get along, children. Don't stand on mother's path. Get along now. Saturday afternoon, January 23rd, 2021. Ray Bradbury's Let's Play Poison. Thanks for coming to Frankenstein Tea. Take that story in or just wash it over you. Don't, your choice. Take it in or not. But thanks for coming. I'll see you tomorrow at 3:00. Tomorrow's Sunday. I think I'll read. I'm going to try my best effort to. I'm not always good about reading on Sundays and Mondays, but know that I want to. Let's see what happens next. Excuse me. All right. Bye. Peace. Go outside. It's sunny. Sunny on Block Island. Get outside. I'm going outside. Bye.